Today's lesson is about removing sensor dust using Adobe Bridge and Camera Raw. On a recent vacation, I went to Asilomar Beach on the Monterey Peninsula, a beautiful area. However, the weather was really windy and I was using a zoom lens and I was shooting handheld without using a tripod. This can introduce a lot of problems. The lesson I'm about to teach you can be taught using the Develop module of the Lightroom program, or in this case, I'm going to teach you using Adobe Bridge. The problem I encountered while I was on a windy day at Asilomar Beach was that dust got on the sensor of my camera. And if you'll look at all of the thumbnails that I've gathered for you, you'll see that there's quite a large speck on each and every one of my images in exactly the same place. That's how you can tell it's sensor dust as opposed to any other kind of dust that might be on your lens or in another area. They wouldn't be as visible. To show you just how visible I mean, if I look at this in film strip view, it's a rather large block of pixels. So if I continue to just sort of scroll through, sometimes it's blurrier, sometimes it's less, but it's always there. That's how we can tell there's a problem. The beauty of the fact that that spot is in exactly the same location means that I can do a bulk fix on all of these images in pretty much one move. And those edits that I'm about to do will be changeable. They're not permanent, so I can adjust for any variances in my images after I've done this bulk group. The one important thing to note is you'll see I haven't done any other kind of editing, cropping, moving. I want my original images to have that spot in exactly the same location the entire time. In order for me to do the adjustment that I wish to do, the first thing I'm going to do is need to select all of the images in my group. I've collected 77 images, so selecting them one by one would be a problem. The easiest way to remember I can do that is to go to the Edit menu and select All or Command A. My goal is going to be able to open these up using Adobe Camera Raw. You'll note that I shot these with my Nikon using the RAW setting. However, you can also set up Adobe Bridge and Adobe Camera Raw to open up JPEGs. So if your JPEGs have a problem, you can do this adjustment on those as well. In order for me to open these up in Camera Raw, I could double-click them if RAW is set up to be my personal setup. I can also right-click them and choose Open in Camera Raw, but I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut to accomplish that. In order to open up an image from Adobe Bridge into Adobe Camera Raw, I'm going to use Command on a Mac or Control on Windows and type the letter R. You'll notice that those get processed into Adobe Camera Raw. All of those images are showing up on the left side of my screen, ready to go. Of course, the thumbnails need to be generated. Once I'm ready to go, the tool that I'm going to use to fix this is going to be the Spot Removal tool. I can find that up at the top of the screen in the Adobe Raw toolbox. When I hover, you'll also notice there's a keyboard shortcut for it with the letter B. That means from any tool with which I'm working, if I type B on my keyboard, I'll have chosen the Spot Removal tool. When we look at this tool, we have two areas of concentration. That central circle is the area that's going to determine the size of the brush I'm going to use for my adjustment. By default, you want to have it rather slightly larger than that area that you're going to be fixing with it. The blue dotted area that you're seeing is what they call the feather area. There are two ways for us to do this adjustment. I'm going to do one broad one real easily so you can see what it does. If I turn on Clone as my method for spot removal, and I click on my spot, you'll notice a second line comes up, and I will be replacing those pixels quite literally with whatever pixels I happen to hover over with my replacement area spot. Of course, that's not going to be appropriate for this particular job. So I'm going to delete this spot by hitting the backspace or delete key on my keyboard. The alternate method of fixing this is going to be using the heal tool. Now there are two ways I can fix a problem like that. The first way is to use a smaller brush, and I can adjust my brush size here and continue to look at it until I've got it set. But you should also know that on the keyboard next to the letter P, the brackets will incrementally make your brush bigger. This is me using the close bracket, or smaller. I'm using the open bracket. One way that I can do this repair is use a brush that's rather a bit larger than the area I want to work with and paint over it. When I paint over it, I've actually chosen the area I'm going to fix, which is determined by this red pin. I can move the green pin around, moving the area of sampling so that it can actually pick up and heal pixels. By healing, what it means is it's going to actually suck up pixel information from the surrounding area that I originally selected. This would be a fine method. The only difficulty is with the variation of images that I have on my machine, this may not be the route I want to take. So again, I'm going to hit the delete or backspace key on my keyboard to get rid of these spots. In this particular image, I'd rather use a larger brush with a slightly larger feather. Remember, this is all going to be editable on individual images when I'm finished. I'm trying to get the starting point for what I want to do. One thing I'd like you to notice is in this particular area, or in these particular images, the spot is mostly on sky, but it isn't everywhere. In this case, it's on horizon. In another image a little bit further down, it's on rocks. So some of these aren't going to be perfect. They will need adjustment afterward. Beauty of working on camera raw images is that we have that flexibility. I'm going to use a larger brush so that that black circle area is just a little bit bigger than the area I want to repair. And I'm going to click. As soon as I click, you'll notice it covered over or replaced that content. What I want to do is try and position my replacement area spot to someplace where it's going to be pretty consistently in the same location in all the images, so that I don't have to do a lot of adjustment on all my images. If I want to see it without those circles, I'll hit the Show Overlay area on here. That looks pretty good. If I turn that off, I can see what it's going to look like, and if I turn it back on, I have the ability to adjust it. One thing I hadn't mentioned, I'm going to delete this for a moment. One thing I hadn't mentioned, if you're wondering where you have spots in an image, we do have a button called Visualize Spots. That'll show you wherever there's contrast, and you'll mostly see those in clearer areas. At its lowest setting, it's looking for the broadest contrast, but as I go further up, look how crazy the water gets. Lots of changes in tone here, but you can see that in the sky, there's really only one spot. I'm going to go back to that same adjustment I just had now. And I've got the settings that I want to apply to all of my images. In order to do that real quickly, I'm going to again use the Select All command, which is Command A on a Mac or Control A on a Windows computer. All of the images have been selected, but they don't all have this little marker that shows that the settings have been moved to every image. That's called synchronization, and it can be accessed from this little drop-down menu next to Film Strip. You'll note Sync Settings is the option that I want to use. It would also be Option S on a Mac or Alt S on a Windows computer. And once I've done that, it asks, what do I want to set? Now, there are a lot of settings that we'd be able to synchronize, but this is just about the spot removal. Up in the subsets area, you'll note that there are a great many controls, or I could check my own subset, which is already ready for me to check, and I would check spot removal. Before I do that, I do want you to see there is in fact a subset that just says spot removal. It only has that checked. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know what I'm saying. Go whichever way you'd like, and once I hit OK, notice that that little icon appears on every one of those images. And as I go through each image, I'm going to turn off my show overlay for this. As I go through each image, now some of them again haven't been processed, but as I go through, note that the corrections are pretty much correct, except for this one. Remember we had one that it was very close to the horizon? That's easy to fix. I go to this particular image and just say, you know what, sample from here or a similar area. If I turn off overlay here, it's only affected this image. It hasn't affected any of my others. If I go back to the previous image, it's using the previous setting. I just changed it for this image. And as I continue through my list of images, this has been resolved. That's a bird, by the way, so I don't want to retouch that one. Real quick, real easy, another bird. Once we're finished changing these, you could choose to open them up in Photoshop, but 77 images would be a little nuts. I'm going to hit done. And when we take a look in the bridge, you'll notice that it's taking a minute to populate, but every one of these images has that adjustment made to it. If I wanted to change it for just one image, I can either open this image again in Camera Raw, or if I wanted to delete that setting just from this image, I can click on this little marker, choose to open in Camera Raw, or I can go back to my developing settings and go back to clearing my settings and work on it separately if I chose to do that. That's the answer to how to resolve spots in all these images. I hope this was helpful to you. I look forward to seeing you in another class. Thanks for watching. AYM for Training offers live, instructor-led online and on-site training in a variety of software applications. Please contact us at any of these locations for further information.